love you? Do we hate you? Why should you care? Cause we're the best damn review team out there. It's time to rate that album.
Hi, and welcome back to Rate That Album, a back and forth album review between myself, Joseph Fremming, and my good friend Paul Muad'Dib. Paul, how are you doing?
Sorry, I kind of got my motor stuck in my brain. I'm okay, buddy. How are you?
Well, Paul, I'm sick and tired of hanging around with dogs like you. You're the first to get blamed and always the last bitch to get paid.
Yeah. Well, you know what? The laughs may be cheap, but that's because the joke's on you.
Yeah, this week, Paul took a spin on the wheel of shit, and we landed on 1980s Emotional Rescue by the band The Rolling Stones. So, Paul, I'll kind of give my thoughts here, but let's get your initial thoughts of where you land on the Stones, because I find people either like them or hate them.
You know, I've always been like, I know people like it's they're to me, I don't understand the polarization. They're fine. I mean, they've put out fucking how many goddamn albums?
Well, this one alone in 1980s, their 17th album.
Yeah, in 1980.
They've only been around for 20 years.
Yeah, and they're still fucking doing shit. So, I mean, with the Stones, I think this album is perfect, by the way, for us to discuss this. And I'm going to bring this up, I think, after we do the review and kind of my thing. But the Stones, they are, I mean, they have bangers. Let's put that out there right now. I don't care. People who say they hate the Stones, there are songs of the Stones that you will listen to and be like, all right, that's not a bad song. They have such a huge catalog of music, right? Yep. And I mean, they have been around since 1963.
Yep.
And I think between EPs and live things and like that, I mean, they gotta have 50, 60 records out there, Joe. I have
at
to think.
At the least.
At the least.
If you throw in greatest hits.
And that type of thing.
Live
right?
album. Yeah, it's.
I mean, and they have greatest hits based on years, if I'm not mistaken. Like, these are the greatest 1963 to 1967 greatest hits. And these, I mean, there is something about the Stones. There's an undeniable talent there. This is one of those bands, one of those musician groups that is absolutely, you cannot deny, a powerful magnet of talent, a talent powerhouse. And I don't know if we'll see something quite like this again. I mean, people say that a lot. I think we will, but not because of when they came about and kind of how they came about. I don't think we'll see them like get the heights that the Rolling Stones did per se, if that makes sense. But this is one of those once in a generation bands. And this one actually went like 3-4 generations. So there you go. That's my thoughts on the Stones.
Yeah, I mean, they came out with another once in a generation band of the Beatles, of which they had a friendly revival. And this kind of like what I kind of want to touch a bit before we get in the review, because arguably my favorite era. I'm a Stones fan. My favorite is late 60s into the mid 70s when they're like just fucked up on heroin, because that era gave us Let It Bleed, Beggar's Banquet, Exile on Main Street, Goat's Head Soup, which are just fucking phenomenal. And it's the post Brian Jones stuff. It's with Mick Taylor. And so, like, granted, after their first decade, they put out their best material. And it kind of makes me like, when is the right time for a band to bow out? Because arguably the Beatles did it much sooner. They did it 1970, 69, if you want to be technical. And they went out, but they mostly imploded. It wasn't really
That's
like
the
they lucked
difference,
out
right?
They
Yeah.
lucked out on that implosion because where the Stones continued on, but then when you get to like the album we're talking about, which is Emotional Rescue in 1980, they feel like their creativity is running on fumes. Beyond fumes, like the tank is empty at this point.
Mm-hmm.
So, what do you think? Should
I'm-
bands continue? And if they do, I think if they continue, it should be for the right reasons and not just for paycheck.
This is a good question because, Joe, I'm going to bring up wrestling.
Oh, fucking god damn it!
Just calm down for a minute, all right? So there is, and again, I want to make it very clear, people, I actually don't watch wrestling anymore, okay? I listened to a lot of like behind the scenes podcasts of when I was a kid and getting kind of like the crazy, like what was going on behind. I find that stuff far more fascinating than what the wrestlers were doing. But I bring this up because it was all over my YouTube and everything because of these podcasters that Ric Flair many years ago had a retirement match, and it was actually considered really good for a retirement match. Then he came back like 10 years later. He can barely walk, and he's in this match, and it's pathetic. Then you have wrestlers like The Rock and things like that, and that keep coming back, or like Hulk Hogan, and then he has his own story. They keep coming back. The problem with this is it's not a answer that you can give like carte blanche. It's not like a yes or no. It really depends on where they're at. For example, poor Ozzy, he just canceled all of his tours because he can't do it anymore. Now, should he have stopped? Like some people be like, he should have stopped a while ago. Other people say, no, I love the shit that they're doing. It's a subjective question. I do think on average, people who are used to the fame and that type of thing do tend to stay past their expiration date. I will say that. But sometimes it works. I mean, think about it, Joe. This is 1980. People were saying they were kind of done after 20 years, and they still were going to put out some of their best music 10 years later.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, the album after this contains some of their biggest hits.
Exactly, Joe. So, yeah.
Tattoo You has Start Me Up. Yeah.
Yeah.
Start Me Up on there, which they sold for a lot of money for, what was it, Windows to use in a commercial? Like more money than they could ever use in their lifetime. Because it was that big of a hit. Yeah.
No, Joe, I mean, Tattoo You, and then what came after Tattoo You? It was Still Life, which wasn't a bad album. After Still Life was Undercover. I mean, they still had a lot of life to them yet. I mean, you and I talked about it, and other bands have done things, like we talked about the Bangles, where they ended too early, but that's because they imploded. So, I mean, when people say something like that, again, there's examples of both. And I think with the Stones, they proved everybody fucking wrong, and we're like, we can still fucking go. So, I mean, the fact that Mick Jagger's not fucking dead is insanity. Is fucking insanity, Joe.
Yeah, I agree to an extent, though. And here's the thing, because their hits after this album, and will be when we get into this album, are all very reminiscent of their earlier hits in the 60s and early 70s. I mean, yeah. It's kind of like they're going back to the well. They're not really doing anything original. And that's kind of what's going to be my big gripe on this album, which is Emotional Rescue. But yeah, it's hard to gauge that. I mean, it's hard when bands should gracefully bow out, because almost every band that does a graceful bow out comes back for the paycheck. And I don't behoove the Stones. They're like, almost in their 80s now? Late 70s, early 80s, and they're still selling out tickets. And I've not talked to one person who's gone to a Stones concert and regretted it.
You know, my mom, I think, has seen the Stones twice. And every time she's seen them, she's like, "Oh my God, it's the greatest band ever." You know,
Yeah.
so, and I'm not gonna. I mean, I'm honest. I'm not shelling out the hundreds of dollars. I'm not. I respect the Stones. I like the Stones, but I'm not that big of a Stones fan to do that. If that makes sense.
If they did the whole album of one of my favorites, I probably would. Like if they did all of Exile on Main Street, like that weird ass double album, I'd probably shell out the $200 to see that live.
Good point. Good point.
Sticky
Good
Fingers. They did that thing with Sticky Fingers. I probably would have seen that if I had the chance, but you know what? I wouldn't pay hundreds of dollars to see live, Paul. Emotional Rescue.
Emotional Rescue.
Yes, the very confusing. Like I said, Running on Fumes, almost completely filler album from 1980, where they're still pushing the disco, even at this point, disco is pretty much on its way out the door, which is another very confusing thing for me. It's interesting that most of the songs are just the core members, except for like some keyboards and other elements. This is Keith Richards as he kind of flamed out with heroin in the 70s.
Gee.
Well, I mean, you know, the stories of recording Exile on Main Street is, you know, he'd basically on the nod all day, wake up at midnight or something like that, and then they'd go and record. You know, so a lot of that, like, which fueled the greatness of those early 70s albums, also kind of starts tearing the band apart. Weird that drug addiction can kind of do that, Paul.
Drug addiction.
First time in history of
I mean,
music bands where drugs really put everybody in a rough spot.
You know, well, drugs and music are interesting, aren't they? Because there are definitely artists out there that thrived, as we've seen, because of the drug use, and then flamed out because of the drug use.
Because sometimes the drug use is the muse.
Mm-hmm, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, it's like people like, yeah, the drugs did. You know, of course the drugs didn't make the music, but it was the muse. Like, it'd be silly to say there'd be a Sgt. Pepper if there was never LSD.
Right. 100%. It's. I mean, Rubber Soul's the same way, right?
Yeah. Revolver.
I mean, a Revolver, if it wasn't for pot, Revolver.
Dark Side of the Moon.
Oh, Jesus Christ! Yeah.
The Piper at the Gates of Dawn.
Piper at the Gates of Dawn. Yeah. Drugs have been a muse. I mean, fucking Velvet Underground, heroin, right?
Yeah, Miles Davis.
Right. The problem with it is, and I since we're talking about the Stones, we'll talk a little bit about the Beatles. I believe it was George Harrison of the Beatles talked about going to Woodstock and thought it was going to be this amazing the original Woodstock, and thought this is going to be this amazing, melding of, like,
He went to Haight-Ashbury.
Was that it? Was it Haight-Ashbury?
He went to Haight-Ashbury.
Okay.
And saw all the burned out kids.
That's what it was. Yeah. And he thought, oh my God, this is going to be a mecca of, intellectual conversation. All these people are going to be turned on from the drugs. They're going to, they're going to be thinking, they're going to be doing these things. And all he saw was a bunch of spotty dropouts. And this is this is the experience that I've seen, with my own use is I was very fortunate enough to never really get the hook. I was able to dabble, get what I wanted out of it, and walk away. And I've seen it with I was in bands. I hung out with other bands. I remember, I'm not going to say the name of the band because I don't want to, in case people who do listen know it. And it was a local band. But I remember going after a show, and they were having an after party, and on the table there was a metal, like, serving plate, and every single drug under existence was on this thing. And I was like, I'm out. I guess I'll see you guys later, because I was like, this isn't my scene. It's not just, whatever. But then you get this, I'm trying to think of some other really famous drug burnout stories from musicians. I mean, you get,
Well, you
Keith
got Lane
Richards.
Staley from Alice in Chains.
Alice in Chains. Yeah, you had just a lot. So
There's
yeah,
a lot of casualties on that road.
yeah, absolutely. Chris Cornell, I believe. So yeah, I mean, just uh, it can be the muse, and then it can become the downfall.
Yeah.
Blondie, good prime. That's a really good example right there. The drugs kind of fucked them up for a little while because they ended up breaking up because of the drugs.
Yep. Mark Lanigan.
Yep, Mark
Which we've
Lanigan.
covered. Yesterday was the 1 year anniversary of when he died.
Mm.
Yeah, he had heroin. Yeah, so it's the muse, and then the muse it becomes the demon, I guess. And that's what happens with Richards, and he cleans up, and this is kind of like when he's starting to come out of that, and then there's friction then coming into it, because he used to be the kind of lead guy in the band.
Yep.
And now for years it was Jagger, because somebody had to take the reins. It's kind of like the Lennon thing with McCartney, where Lennon just kind of fucked off for so many years, and he's like, all of a sudden he's like, "Hey guys, I'm going to run the band," and they're like, "Nah, nah, you're not focused enough."
Oh boy, yeah. I mean,
But yeah, so that's kind of it's a Richards. Yeah, the stories of him in the 70s. Jesus.
the stories of him, even still in the 80s.
Even his even he just quit drinking a few years ago.
Did he really just a few years ago?
Yeah, but he doesn't consider beer booze.
Okay.
He's a weird guy.
No.
He's a guy who has fish lures in his hair. So what are you gonna do?
No. I'm gonna say this. That is a classic alcoholic thing, because my old man, when he supposedly quit drinking, and he was still hiding that he was drinking vodka, but when he quote quit drinking, beer isn't drinking. And he'd fucking pound like two 24 packs to make up for the vodka he was missing.
Yeah.
So, that's part of the alcoholic cycle there, where it's that whataboutism and making moving the goalposts, as it were.
You got to remember though, Paul, there was Brian Jones was kicked out of this band because even he was doing too much for Keith Richards.
Right.
He'd end up drunkenly falling in his pool and drowning. So,
oh God, so sad.
Yeah, talented guy. But we're here to talk about Emotional Rescue, Paul. And like I said, it's 1980.
Emotional Rescue.
And I feel like they were a little artistically exhausted at this point. But you want to get into it, Paul? You want to get into it?
I do, because I have,
Is there anything else you want to touch upon with the Stones before we dig into this?
I mean, it's hard because normally we'll dig into the history of the band, right?
Well, there's nothing we can add.
And
that
this
hasn't been
thing
said about these guys.
Right. I mean, if you're interested in the Stones and you're listening to this, there's not much we can add. But the problem is, we're doing an album review, right? We're not doing a review on the Stones. And again, it's easier for us to talk about bands and kind of go, okay, during this time frame, they did this, they did that, they did this. But when you get to the Stones and they have a fucking 60-year history and they're still going, it's hard to draw the line of what story are we going to tell of the Rolling Stones, right?
Oh, it's not that hard, because they're pretty much creatively bankrupt on this album. That's because we're going to talk. This is a very confusing album for me.
It is, but for me, actually, there's so much there that I want to get to. But I mean, I just want to from 1965 to 1967, that was like the big years for them, and then. We touched upon it. If you don't know it, Jones died, and he was the drummer, right? He was the drummer.
He was the guitarist. He was the original lead guitarist.
He was the original lead guitarist. That's right. He died.
He was the guy who introduced the sitar into their stuff for Paint It Black and shit like that. He was a very innovative, but drugs really destroyed him. Following that is the Mick Taylor years. That's the years I like. I think they kind of come into their own as more of a solid band. The interaction between Richards and Taylor, guitar wise, is the best the Stones will ever be, and that's even Mick Jagger said that, and so has Keith Richards, which is fuck you, Ronnie Wood, I guess.
Right. Yep. Because there was the Ronnie Wood years, right? Or the Ronnie
Which
Wood.
are now, it's from after
Yep.
Mick Taylor, it's Ronnie Wood. Ronnie Wood should, he was a good fit. Like, I like the Faces as well.
Yep, I like the
him
Faces
and Rod
as well.
Stewart.
Yep, him and Rod Stewart, absolutely.
So he's a perfect fit for the band, but I just feel like it just, nothing really great came out of it. And I think that's also part of age.
Yep. No, I completely agree with you.
And fear of rocking the boat after a while.
Yeah, absolutely. So then you had the commercial peak years, which is actually right after this album is when they basically put out some of their like commercially their biggest things. And then in the 80s, I mean, they were kind of doing their own thing at that point. And then in the 90s, they got back together, started putting out hits again.
Well, I mean, I don't know if you'd call those hits. I mean,
but it made them relevant again, I should say.
It gave them a reason to continue on.
In the 90s, and then by the 2000s, I mean, it was kind of done, but they're
still
still
touring
going.
act at
Yeah,
point.
They're just a touring. I mean, they put out occasional like singles here and there, but that's really it. But I mean, if you're really fascinated, you want to know some things, there's lots of books, there's lots of information, there's documentaries. I think the what is it, The Adventures of the Rolling Stones or something like that, I think is a documentary. Didn't Scorsese do a documentary with them? I think
he did like a live show or something like
something like
Shine
that.
a Light or something, I think.
Yeah, there's a lot out there on the Stones, so there's really not much we can cover. And the problem is, if you and I were to really go through like the history, like we did say with Blondie last album or the Bangles last album, we wouldn't get to the fucking album.
No,
because there's so much there. So I'm done.
I'm not really interested in talking about the history of the Stones because, again, it's already been said. I talked about the era I like. You talked about the era you like. And now we're what I'm going to call the not so great.
Well, the not so great album.
Not so great album, yes, and it's and the reviews were pretty much on the same. And with my gripe is that a lot of these songs sound like retreading of familiar ground. Even the disco songs, because they had already done a disco album-ish before this. I say ish, so don't jump on me, Stones fans. But it had Miss You on. It was Some Girls. I'm not a fan of that album. I'm one of those. I just don't care for it. Whatever.
Okay. So I'm going to be on. I did not wiki anything before this. I just went off because I know a lot about the Stones, right? I didn't really wiki anything. I didn't go anything off. I didn't look at the reviews of this album. So maybe I'll talk about what I want to talk about before we get to it, then after. My problem with this album, Joe, because I think we're going to be on the same point. This is what I would consider the structural skeleton to every fucking Stones song ever. Like, this to me pulls away all the fucking curtains, everything. Like, this is the Stones by the numbers phoning it in on every one of the things that they do musically, is my thought on this album.
Yeah, I mean, it's just retreading, and it's not particularly interesting.
It's not even.
And here's the weird thing with this album is it's performed well.
Yeah, it is.
It's produced well.
Mm-hmm.
It's just amazingly forgettable.
Well, the thing is that with the Stones, I was thinking about this. Well, let's start because I have notes. Let's start.
Let's start.
Yeah.
So it starts off with Dance Part 1.
Mm-hmm.
There's no Dance Part 2, by the way.
And there shouldn't be.
Full disclosure. And this is the one song that Ronnie Wood wrote for the album. And right away I was annoyed because it's it's a disco song. And like, you either do disco well or just don't do it at all. This is not done well. It's not the worst disco song. There's two of them. The other one is egregiously bad.
So again, I'm going to bring up, we brought this up as Blondie, right? Like here you have a band that's really not a disco band, right? And they're coming at the last gasp of disco. By 1980, most people had turned their back on disco. It was kind of a done deal at that point. People were over it.
Disco, the record burning at Comiskey Field.
Yeah. And then
it seemed a little. That seemed like a bit much.
Disco Stew says disco will never die. But
Disco Stew doesn't advertise.
It doesn't advertise. Normal Stew. So
well, Homer had that jacket, he just didn't have enough space to put the D in Disco Stud.
The Disco Stud. You should totally get that jacket.
Disco Stew doesn't advertise.
I love how it was a single joke, created an entire character that ran through the seasons.
His platform shoes with the fish.
You can't get them out.
Talk about another thing that overstayed its welcome. Anyways,
right. It's funny we went there, but okay. It has some disco funk to it. The hook works. The thing is, it's a song. I mean, when the Stones do a bad song, the weird thing, and this is why I think there's such like, it's, people hate them because they're so whatever, right? But the truth of the matter is, even when they do a band song, it's better than some of the worst bands' best music, right? Like they're failing.
Well, that's not hard to do. There's a million bands out there putting out really shitty music. Oh, that's not.
I know, but
that's not exactly the great bar.
But I mean, even when they fail, it's like an upward fail. It's like they could have done a lot worse. I mean, there's a song on here that I actually really despise, and we'll get to it. But but the thing is I don't understand why. I mean, I know it was made in 1980. I mean, in 1979, it was recorded in 1979. But by 1980, why the fuck are you releasing a disco song? It's not. That was an error judgment on everyone involved. The record company, the Stones, the producers, everybody. That was a misjudgment. Nobody wanted it. Emotional Rescue, was it on the radio a little bit? Yeah. Is it anymore? Not really. No.
These songs aren't played on the radio. No. Maybe like
one I know is.
The hit though, I don't think I've ever even heard it on the radio. I used to have to listen to a lot of FM old greatest hits, classic rock stations. Even that one I don't even remember. It's like that one just gets glazed over, and as it should, because it's a bad song. Is it great? No. Is it? Yeah. Yeah. So Dance Part 1, man.
Dance Part 1 though is never.
It starts with babbling that just stops. Like they know, like, yeah, we should let's just stop doing this. They even said, and skip it.
And again, I hate. Let's get into my other pet peeve, dude. Lyrics. Boy, how many times
you said that worked? The ooh, and it's got me moving. Ooh, it's got me moving.
Ooh, it's got me moving. And
Sharona.
But that's another thing that Mick Jagger does, and this is
the weird stats he does.
Yeah, the weird things that he does, and I tend to lean towards some of them, like where people, because this is one of the things he does on a lot of his hits. It's a very James Brown. It's very bluesy. It's a very live type of thing. It doesn't do much for me. When I like the Stones, we'll get to it later, and I'll explain. Like, this is the Stones that gets me. I see where people would like it, but again, this is really feels like a phone in. Like it really this. Yeah. All right. Let's move on. Joe, what did you think of Summer Romance?
My note for this right off the bat: a generic bar band blues rock song, utterly forgettable, and lots of repeating.
My notes is super generic 70s and 80s rock song. I will say it's far better than a lot of the music that was coming out in the 1978, 1982 in terms of production. But the lyrics are driving me insane.
Yeah, they're again. This feels like they're on fumes.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's. I mean, and the thing is, like, they try to be shocking at times in this album, and by 1980, it's not.
It's not.
You had the punk movement that's pretty much like done too by 1980.
It's starting to die.
That first wave of it.
That first wave of punk is starting to die. Absolutely is.
And like they were doing a lot more risque lyrics. I mean, the Stones are a long way from their song "Cocksucker Blues" at this point.
Yep.
So like when they're doing it, it feels like they're doing it just. We better have something in there a little risque.
I agree.
And it's weird that they're singing about money on this song. Like, I need money so bad. Like, dude, you guys are millionaire rocks.
Wait, are we talking about? No, we're talking about Summer Romance. Wait, which
Summer Romance?
Okay, hang on. Did I get a different? Because I listened to the album. Did I get a different track listing? Hang on here.
Yeah, Summer Romance.
Yeah, Summer Romance. Okay, but is there money in that? All I got was "It's over now."
Verse 3. I need money so much. I need money so bad. I can't be your mom. Okay. I can't be your dad.
Right. I was checked, dude. I'm sorry.
I'm a serious man. I got serious lust, Paul.
Joe, I apologize. I was because it was so repetitive. Like I think my brain shut off. So,
God,
like. All I remember from the song truly is "It's over now." It's a summer romance. It's through. It's over now. It's I didn't even realize that verse 3 deviated from any of the shit that they were saying. So I apologize.
Like shit, that's pretty embarrassing.
That is pretty embarrassing, you guys. But hey, you've done it too, where you've said to me, "I gotta admit, Paul, I got checked out." So this is my.
I don't think I've ever said that once during this.
It's God.
There's not much that it's like over and over a summer romance over and over.
You can't blame me for being like, wait a minute, there was lyrics about money in here. God damn it.
Oh God, yeah, it's a forgettable song. It's not that good.
Fucking A, yeah.
Then we get to a kind of a gross song. For me, at least how I read this song, it's "Send It to Me." Is that on your track listing, Paul? Do you remember this song? Because it starts with a nice guitar intro and some reggae riff. I don't mind. This is about. I feel like this is "Send Me a Prostitute," and I don't care what they look like or where they are from.
Yeah,
I just need something to fuck
or
up.
like a mail order bride.
Yeah, I don't think the Stones are the Marion type, Paul.
No. Yeah. No.
Get your head out of your ass, Paul. This is Rolling Stone.
God damn it, you're giving people too much credit, Gilmer.
You turn this into a Gilmer thing.
This isn't Gilmer. This isn't Peter Gabriel. They aren't nice. This isn't Tony Banks. Mr. Congeniality. This is the Stones. They just want to fuck.
We get it. Yeah. It seems like they're trying too hard. Like, we get it. You're in your 40s now.
Yeah.
Who are you trying to prove this to? Nobody cares. I don't care.
I think once you have that lifestyle and you had that like in the 60s, 70s, you're still trying to get that. I mean, dude, I think you just got to fucking or the fucking scratch the VD itch. I mean, really. My notes for this one were it's standard Stones flair with a reggae beat. I remember this was on the radio at one point. I do know that this was on the radio.
Yeah, I think it was a single.
It was a single, but it's not anymore, right? But
I don't think any of these songs are on the radio anymore, Paul. Like, it's like the radio will do "Start Me Up" still.
"Start Me Up"
and "Beast of Burden."
"Beast of Burden." They won't
go too far after that, and then "Miss You." But after that, they really don't go after 75 Stones. It's just.
But I'm telling you, "She's So Cold" is still played on the radio. I know that for a fact. It's still played on the radio. But the thing that I remember.
I don't know why you keep saying that. That's never happened. That song was
never happened. Never happened. So I will say that the reason why I remember this song, having been on the radio, is I do remember she could be Romanian, she could be Bulgarian, and I was thinking about that, and I'm like, they did that specifically for world touring. They did that specifically so they could get groupies in world touring, and they could fucking emphasize it or whatever, right? But yeah, it's again the Stones. They fail in a way that is like the floor is not that far when they fall. They're not grossly incompetently failing on songs.
No.
Basically, it's just it comes as filler.
It's lazy.
It's lazy.
Up like, yeah.
I mean, honestly, there is a blueprint in this song that this could have been a good song. Honestly, yep. It really could have. But
yeah, I thought that on a couple other songs too. But
yeah, but they're so.
And if you want to go to blueprints, Paul, we get to "Let Me Go," which for me suspiciously feels a lot like the song "Shattered."
Yeah.
Like, they took the blueprint from "Shattered" and they're like, let's do it again with "Let Me Go." Only 2 years later.
It very much has that, but I have to say the intro. I went, "Seek and Destroy," Sting's entrance music. What's happening here?
I don't know what that is. Anyway, the Police. I didn't know the Police had intro music, Paul. But,
well, everyone loves Sting, and the Police. But again, this just is another blueprint for that Stones rock. It's just. Again, this whole album, I feel like it's kind of, again, if you want to dissect how the Stones put together songs, this is it. Like, This is the blueprint. The problem is that it's the window dressing, the things that make it truly interesting, the things that gussy it up, the whistles and the bells are stripped down because you can just tell they're burnt out. So all it really is like a clear glass to like one of those anatomy dummies, like where you can see everything that's inside, everything stripped down. So really, if anyone who wants to like try and become the new Rolling Stones, honestly, listen to this album because this is how they did it. This is paint by numbers Stones albums music. Yeah.
And it's weird because it's paint by Stones song. This is like very much an archetype song, and the song's about just like letting something go. Like, it feels weird, like you guys aren't letting go of this thing, but you're singing it like, oh God, like maybe they're not aware. I have no idea. Fuck.
Yeah, and part of it is again, I think too, and let's be honest, when this happens a lot, when artists kind of get to a certain point, they surround themselves with yes people. No one wants to tell them no. They start to kind of really get up their own ass. They stop acting like people and really become these things. And I think at this point in the Stones' career, maybe no one could tell them this isn't a good idea. Like, again, the lyrics are just, ugh. The guitar solos, ugh. Yeah. You have 9 verses in a fucking 4-minute song. Stop it. Stop it. Stop it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Up next, we got Indian Girl, which, again, it felt to me like this sounds like a version of Beast of Burden. But this song I didn't think was bad.
Okay.
Here's because I like the lyrics in it. I like it's a story song. It gets like weird political stuff, but it actually, it's not as empty, I think, as the other songs we've had so far.
This is what I want to say when I was talking a little bit earlier. This is the song I was bringing up when it comes to the Stones and what I appreciate for the Stones. The Stones usually have one slow song. They always have at least one slow song, thoughtful song on every one of their albums. Yep. And I am always a sucker for that song.
Yeah, like on Exile, Shine a Light.
Yes,
God, that's
yes.
such a fucking phenomenal song.
It
Can't always get what you want.
can't always get what you want. Ruby Tuesday.
Yeah,
I mean,
Play with Fire.
That's it. Annie. Angie. Excuse me, Angie. Yeah, those are the Stone songs that resonate with me the most.
Yeah, because they're so fucking good.
They're so fucking good.
Like, I'd love to see them do an acoustic album like that. Like that, man.
Yeah. Yeah, I would too.
Wild Horses.
Oh my God. Fuck. Yes, Joe. Even
Tight Pants now thinking of these songs, Paul. Gosh, these songs are good. This band was like
this band was
talking
really
about this
good.
Shitty album, but like you talk about like when they were actually like on fucking fire, and you're like, holy fuck, the difference is just.
She's a Rainbow. She's a Rainbow is another one that I put in that category because it has that awesome piano and everything in it. Yes, they
my thumb.
That's one of them. I mean, you just. These are the things that the Stones do really well, and there's always one of those songs on their album. And for me, it is Indian Girl on this album. Lyrics are great.
Yeah, he's painting a really picture of like this horrible thing. It's like,
horrible thing, and he's doing it from the right point of view.
Yeah,
right.
He's the white guy.
Yep,
he's not going in as like the savior. It's just kind of like. He's seeing this, and they're telling him what's just happened. People are being raped. It's poverty. It's fucking terrible. I believe it's in Granada, right? Granada, yeah.
Yeah, so, I believe it. Yep, I believe. Yeah, yep. I believe it was Granada. Yeah.
Last piece of meat was eaten by the soldiers that raped her. Like, holy fuck, man.
Yeah, they're fighting for Mr. Castro in the streets of Angola. There's intelligence, and this is the thing. This is what really separates the Stones from other bands. There is an intelligence. Yep. There is an absolute intelligence to them. And regardless, I know Keith Richards is a drug-addicted joke, and I know Mick Jagger's kind of, just this weird guy that blah, blah, blah. But there is a intelligence, and this is what is missing from a lot of music. People just nowadays, it's throw whoever in there, give them a beat, give them a sound, give them this. This is what's missing. There is a soul to the Stones, and that is what gives them a spark. There was a soul to Nirvana. That's what gave them a spark. This is, there are these bands that have this soul, and unfortunately, it's a dying situation in modern music.
Yeah, that soul, and then like kind of like the. Looking at the world, like another example of them doing is Sympathy for the Devil, which I think is like when we're talking about genius, taking a look at biblical times and modern times from the perspective of Satan. Please allow me to introduce myself.
Absolutely. And he's talking about all the start of World War I, World War II, the assassination of Kennedy. There is absolute brilliance in those lyrics. I mean, Billy Joel, for all what his fucking, good night.
He has soul, though.
He had soul.
Yeah, even with the he had, for every uptown girl, there's a piano man. You know what I mean? Like, Piano Man is like cliche it is. You listen to the lyrics, it's not a happy song. It's a pretty depressing song about these people, these regulars in a fucking bar. Who just kind of give up on their dreams, but they still talk about their dream. Like, there's that element, the human element, I think, and that's getting missing. Like you brought up, it's kind of getting missing in music is the human element parts.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I know it's hard to hear the lyrics for it, but We Didn't Start the Fire. Brilliant, intelligent music from Billy Joel.
I fucking love that song.
And that's the lyrics of Sympathy for the Devil remind me of that, because it's going into like these massive sparks that caused fire. So I always relate those two songs together for whatever, there's a correlation in my head between them. But Indian Girl, 100%. Again,
it's a good song. This is a good song.
This is like my, I will say it's my favorite song on the album.
Yeah, this and another one coming up I really like too, but this would be like if I put a mix, like, Because like I usually from all the albums review that we like, I'll usually throw a song or two on this ongoing mix of mine. So Indian Girl will probably make that mix.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because it's just it's interesting. And again, like you said, they're burnouts, they're druggies, but they're not stupid. For all the shit Keith Richards has done, he's pretty fucking lucid and intelligent when you watch interviews with him.
Oh yeah.
Like, I mean, I think some of it is also played up too for show. I mean, they're selling us a product, and the product is the Rolling Stones.
100%. Yeah.
Now, talking about genius, now let's go to the antithesis of that with Where the Boys Go.
Jesus Christ.
This was egregiously bad.
I put this is the filler of the filler album. That's literally my notes. It's the filler of the filler album.
And I wrote that it's a silly song for dudes in their late 30s and early 40s to be singing. It's like, it's bro time. Like,
yeah.
Man, like, that's a weird thing to say when you're that old. Like, that's what you say in your 20s, man.
Yeah. It's, I mean, when you got the Stones, and again, thinking about they're in their 40s at this point, and it's not even like their early 40s. Let's be clear.
It's their early 40s.
Yeah,
fair. The way I see it is Lennon was 40 when he died in 1980. I think they're roughly the same age.
Yeah, okay, 40. Okay, I was thinking they're going to be more like 43, 44, but I think you might be right.
Unless they're older than the Beatles, which I don't think so. I think they're roughly the same age. But.
Maybe. I don't know. That's a really good question. Saturday night, To Hold You Tight, for a giggle and a laugh, a little bit of ass, for a little piece of this and a little bit of that, for a little piece of stick, for a little piece of cunt. And it's like, Jesus Christ. Again,
it's like they're trying to pepper the shock value, but it's like it's here. You don't really hear it when you're listening to it, honestly. Like, it's when you look at the lyrics, you're like, oh, they're saying some shit, but
yeah, it's, again, it's not Cocksucker Blues.
Yeah, no, Cocksucker Blues is a good song.
Yeah, it is a good song. So yeah, like I said, it's just the filler of the filler. It really is. This is like the trash of the trash.
Yeah. Which is okay. So so now we go to Down in the Hole. This is the song I do like a lot too, because it's just a straight up blues song.
It is. It is.
Well. It's done well, the guitar well. So like between my two favorite songs, Sandwich in the Middle is the worst song on the album. No, not the worst song, but the filler of the filler, which is a very weird sequencing thing.
Yes.
Because this is like, because this is like this blues album is like, you listen to this like, man, why didn't they just straight up just either do an acoustic album or a straight up blues album? Well, I don't think they had done a straight up blues album since maybe their first album or two.
God, no, there was. I thought there was. I could be wrong.
They did one after, like in 2016.
Was that it? Okay, because I know they did,
but like I'm talking about like this era.
No, I don't think so.
Just do the blues, because that's obviously they're shining on this song Down in the Hole.
Yeah,
this is like where this is where they're. It's still the archetype of their but it's good. It's done well, and it is for the shit that's going to come after it.
Yes, for the stuff that's going to come after it. Now, here's my thing, though, and this is, I have written in my note, this is a standard Stones blues song. Now, here's the thing: the Stones were really, honestly good. One of the downsides. Let's call the Stones out for what they did. They were also like an Elvis. They stole a lot of, they were a Led Zeppelin. They stole a lot of minority music and took a lot of it and, change it to a way that was palpable for white people. It's just, it is what it is. But they have a specific style and a specific way that the Stones do their blues. Like when you hear it, like even like before the lyrics kick in, I can go, oh yeah, that is a Stones song. Mick Jagger's gonna pop in when it's their blues. They have a very specific way that they do it. It's always good. Don't get me wrong. It's not like the Legends blues that we've talked about in the past.
God.
But
Bar blues.
yeah, but
White
at the
dudes in bars playing blues music.
but
It's the
compared
worst experience I think I ever have when I go to a bar. I'm just miserable the whole time.
oh god, dude, it's miserable. It's absolutely miserable. But again, compared to what was to come in some of the other blues, like when I like for this album, yeah, probably up there with Indian Girls, one of the better songs.
Yeah.
But when but taking it, it's hard for me because I think about other Stones blues songs and I go, man, this doesn't.
No.
This is not going on a mix for me.
No, this isn't going on a mix.
Yeah.
But,
But I could see
for this album, it's
it's the
probably
best
the
song.
number 2 best song. On it.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I'm with you on that, Joe. So I do agree with that. It is what they do, and it's what they do very, 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 very well.
All right, Paul. Now we're at the creme de la creme of the album.
The one they
Obviously,
named it after.
Obviously, your highlight,
Oh God, yes.
the title track, "Emotional Rescue." Paul. Oh boy, lots to unpack here, huh?
Yeah. Ooh.
It's the longest song on the album.
It is the longest song on the album.
It hits one of my angry check marks right away with falsetto.
It does. I knew right away. When I was listening, I knew that now about you. I was like, oh boy. Yep.
And get the disco beat, and it's not like "Miss You," or at least I can see why that's the hit. I don't particularly like it, but I can recognize why something's popular.
Mm-hmm.
This is a bad song. To quote Lars's dad from the Metallica documentary, "You must delete this."
I
And
get
then
it.
the saxophone comes in at no random. My God, Paul. They threw a saxophone in this for no reason.
Yeah, I mean they did, but I gotta be honest with you. Like, I do get why. I get why this was. Why this was the hit. I do in 1980, and there is a hook, there is a catchiness to this, Joe, and I hate even admitting it, but there is a thing there. The problem is, and it's the falsetto, it's the ooh hoo that's a sing along that kind of has
Overproduced too. For me.
it's overproduced.
Oh,
It's not, but I see why, and it
gives
does
me
have this.
indigestion.
What's that?
Gives me
It's
indigestion.
sure, absolutely. I mean, is it great? No. Again,
No, I would actually say it's bad. It's
I
a
would
bad
say
song.
I would say it's bad. But again, it did hit it. Now, again, the band. My understanding is Keith Richards hates this fucking song.
He hates the disco stuff. That was a sticking point between him and
Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, this it was one of the parts of the growing rift between Jagger and Richards. I mean, he plays on it, but he didn't like the direction, the disco direction, especially probably. I think even Richards knew in like '79. This is not a genre that's going to stick around, and I guess Mick was all in on it.
Well, and
When the heroin burnout is like, yeah, this is not a good direction. Maybe, sometimes a broken clock is twice right a day.
but again, Mick Jagger would go and do Dancing in the Streets with David Bowie after this.
And that's such an embarrassing song.
It's an embarrassing
Video,
song, but it made them a
Everything
lot of
about
money.
it's embarrassing.
It made them a lot of money. It made a lot of fucking money. So you can say it's embarrassing, but it's still
A lot
used
of
for
things
fucking
make people-
commercials.
Zack Snyder made a lot of money. It doesn't mean it's high art.
Bring back the Snyderverse.
Marvel movies make a lot of money. They're not high art.
Yeah, no, it's
If I based everything that was quality because it sold a lot, I'd be in a lot of trouble.
But
I would
guess-
have zero taste in anything.
no, it's valid. But again, I get in 1980. I can put myself in 1980
In your
and
leisure suit
in my leisure suit with my friend Larry,
outside Studio 54, ripping lines off.
ripping lines, doing
kids.
bumps, with my gold necklace. But I can see where this was kind of a weird amalgamation of rock, of blues, of disco. There's a little bit of everything here, and there is a hook. And the hook isn't bad. It's getting to the hook. It's the stuff around the hook. But again, when you think of what disco was, dude, it was just music to get fucked up to, and no one was paying attention to anything but the fucking hook anyways. So I get why it was a big song I get why it was commercially successful. Would it be commercially successful today? Absolutely not. If this song had not come out in 1980 and it came out tomorrow, no one would even know. It'd be unknown on YouTube. Yeah.
And the thing is, like, the disco songs I like, I mean, even the verses are interesting. You're just waiting for that hook, and you're just like, this is a lot of bullshit to be sitting through. Like, oh my God, I don't think there's enough cocaine in the world.
Yeah, absolutely.
Imagine like some remix of this where you're just waiting for like half hour for that hook. You're just having to keep ripping lines. Jesus. Just have it end with
I'm like a child. Yeah, I mean, we can't deny the fact that it became a hit, but we can question. This is like the antithesis, I guess, of Huey Lewis. Like, Huey Lewis had no business having songs that good, and yet they were. The Rolling Stones put out a song that had no business being a hit, and yet it was. Like, it's weird. But it's because it's the Stones. It's because they had the productions, because they had the push, they had the name recognition, and they could the record company was going to put any amount of money behind them, because it's the fucking Stones. So next we get to "She's So Cold," which objectively to me, not going on a mixtape, I'm tired of it. But to me, honestly, it is in terms of production, in terms of what one would consider, it's the best song on the album. It is not my favorite. It is not my second favorite. But just for what it is in terms of what I think the Stones do, this is the best. It feels like the least lazy song on the album, if that makes sense, minus Indian Girl. You can disagree with me, Joe. Absolutely.
I disagree with you. Well, I mean,
disagree with me, motherfucker.
One,
bring it.
Don't say objective and then throw in an opinion, Paul. That's not how that word works. That's a pet peeve of mine. It starts and it feels like that song by Lindsey Buckingham for the Vacation movies.
Holiday Road.
I started laughing right away.
Mm-hmm.
Then it made me like, I'd rather be listening to that Lindsey Buckingham song instead of this.
Which is crazy because you hated the Lindsey Buckingham album.
I hated that album. I
listened
to that song over this one. It's solid. This is like them trying to make a single. But my note on this, it's a really real filler song for a single. Like, nothing pops on it for me. You know, it's like they don't bump up the chorus or anything like that. So it just kind of, it falls flat for me.
But it does. But again, I get the commercial appeal of the hook.
Yeah, I get the appeal. And then the lyrics are pretty lazy. And it's a lot of repeating, Paul.
Mm-hmm.
It's she's born in the Arctic zone. Like, try a little better, man.
Yeah.
She was born in Antarctica. It does sound a lot better.
Absolutely. Yes. But it does piss me off because, again, it's my pet peeve of the lyrics.
But you're so cold, Paul. You're so cold. You're so cold. You're so cold.
The first fucking verse. I'm so hot for her, I'm so hot for her, I'm so hot for her, she's so cold, I'm so hot for her, I'm on fire for her, I'm so hot for her, and she's so cold. There was blow being done in the studio. I get it.
He's the burning bush, Paul.
She's so cold,
He's the bleeding volcano.
Yeah, absolutely. But again, the hook is there. Next we get to All About You, Joe. What do you think of All About You?
This is the ending, Paul.
This is the
All
ending.
About You is probably the most interesting for me.
Go on.
The most interesting song on the album.
Mm-hmm.
This album ends on a Keith Richards song, which is basically a fuck you to Mick Jagger.
Essentially, yes. Yes.
I mean, this would be like ending Abbey Road with How Do You Sleep at Night?
Agreed.
You know,
yes,
what I mean? Like, it's interesting.
do.
I like his vocals on this because, you know, we get the bombastic Jagger all the time.
Mm-hmm. You rarely get the Richards.
And when you get Keith, and his vocals sound so vulnerable on this. And I really like it. It's not my favorite, but I think it ends on an interesting song. And yeah, I find this probably the most interesting. It has more to say than any of the other songs I'd get. I think at least Indian Girl has the story, so I like that. But this is kind of like behind the curtain shit that I think music dorks like us we get really greedy about. We're like, oh, what's this about? Huh?
Mm-hmm.
Go on those deep dives on YouTube, which I probably will after we do this. After we wrap this up, I'm like, okay, let's see. I'm gonna watch some interviews on what Keith Richards said.
Yeah, absolutely. No, when you get the songs that you can read between the lines.
Yeah,
and we've talked about that a lot. Like haven't really dug into it per se a lot on the show, but there's times where we're like, hey, a couple songs, and we're like, something was going on. Right? You know, they were going through some shit.
If the show must go on, let it go on without you.
Yeah.
Why must I spend my time with you? So sick of hanging around with jerks like
you. And like
this does not feel like he's singing about being spurned by a woman. This sounds like he's pissed off at somebody, and that the person that's target on his back at this time especially is Jagger.
Well, and you know, and who tells me those lies? Let me think they're true. I heard one or two, and they weren't about me, and they weren't about her. They were all about you, you. Yeah.
So sick and tired of hanging around with dogs like you.
Yeah, there is. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, this is like, you know, the dirt behind the scenes stuff, and you know, I love digging into that, and it's actually a good song to end it on and the album with, even though it's kind of jarring that, I mean, like, surprisingly, Jagger doesn't play on this this track, Paul.
Ooh, shocker. Shocker.
Yeah.
I mean, the one thing I will say that yes, his vocals are vulnerable. However, man, he gets out of key a lot, and that is something that is a little difficult for me.
I'm all right. I've listened to enough punk music in my time that somebody who's not a singer, it doesn't bother me as much as, like, if Jagger's singing out of key, that would bother me. But if it's like somebody who's not, like, I'm a little more forgiving.
Oh my God.
When it's not the singer of the band.
Right. There was something I actually meant to send you the last week, and that you totally just hit it on me. It was an isolated vocal from "Say It Ain't So" on Weezer. Have you heard that? Where it's the backing guy.
Oh, Matt Sharp.
Yeah, Matt Sharp. Yes. The Matt Sharp backing vocal. Yeah. But anyways, I get it, and it is a weird way to end the album, and whoever was in the know when it came to the sequencing was like, yes, let's put it here. I'm in on this. Yeah. So, but that's what it is.
I mean,
you know,
kudos to Keith to put the fuck you, even getting the fuck you song on the album, but I guess he still had some pull, even though there's still that friction within the band.
yeah,
I guess
absolutely.
I love Keith Richards. he's just such a weird fucking guy.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, he is. He's a fascinating.
He's a very interesting guy. For a guy who probably should be like brain dead, and the fact that he can still give very intelligent interviews and shit is just
100%.
Yeah.
100%, Joe. Yeah,
he's not an idiot. Him and Jagger are not dumbasses.
They're not dumbasses, and that's the thing. You know, one of the big things that happen with a lot of because I think this is a really good time to maybe bring this up too. I know this is going to be a longer version, but you remember when the Beatles said they were bigger than Jesus and everyone fucking flipped out. And there started to be this really giant push against the British invasion of music because they were bringing intelligent lyrics. They were bringing thought-provoking things over here, where a lot of what was going on in American music was very bubblegum, was very superficial, was very surface level. It was quote innocent. It was harmless. It wasn't anything. And when someone would bring that kind of up, there was a lot of pressure to push it down. Like, oh man, we don't want people doing that. And the British invasion was all about fuck that. I mean, they were doing a lot of stuff. I mean, the fact that the Rolling Stones have one, which is bizarre. Again, they're part of that invasion. One of their songs is is synonymous in every Vietnam movie, which is "Give Me Shelter."
Yeah, and every Scorsese movie too.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So there was this whole idea of like, oh man, the Beatles are, you know, I remember watching interviews when it's the Beatles and they're trying to push people like, well, you know, they've had their time, right? And they're interviewing these kids and I'm like, no, I think there's some stuff going on. They're like, oh, no. You know, and like they cut someone off and this kid would be like, I think Hermits is going to be the biggest new band ever. And you're just like, yeah, you heard it. You're to hear Hermits is the next big band. And there was just this giant push, and it was because of the intelligence. It was because they were pushing the envelope. It was because, I mean, now edgelords, the problem with edgelords is it's been done. You're not doing anything in terms of being intelligent or pushing anything. You're just being an asshole.
Yeah,
when it was
shock for shock without any real thought behind it.
Without any, it's the rebel without a cause, right? Because there's no point anymore. Now, when the Stones and the Beatles and people were pushing things out, it's because there was boundaries there. What boundary are you trying to push now? I mean, I get it. You know, I'm going to get on a soapbox here. I saw something before we started this podcast where they're like, someone was bringing up, oh my God, Ben Stiller, you know, is he going to cave to woke culture because people are asking him now if he regrets putting out Tropic Thunder, and like a bunch of the comments were actually fucking normal, and people are like, I don't think this ever happened. Like, who's going to Ben Stiller how many years later going, do you regret making Tropic Thunder, or are you gonna disavow Tropic Thunder? And all these people like, this isn't happening, at least in the real pockets of the real world. This isn't a conversation that's occurring.
Twitter's not real life. Like,
right.
People get outraged, and like, I hate to sound like I'm complaining about cancel culture. I'm not. People have legitimate grievances to raise, but like, when you get pissed off about Tropic Thunder, where the context of the character in question, the Robert Downey Jr. character, is he's the asshole. He's the joke. It's not the blackface. It's the fact that he's such a method actor and he does something so disgustingly wrong and he doesn't see it. That is the joke. We're laughing at him. We're not laughing with him.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. And so when I kind of look at some of this stuff, and I guess my whole point with it was that the fact that people lump, I think, Mick Jagger in and Keith Richards, because this is more of that push of the anti-British invasion of, oh my God, they're just spotty, they're burnouts, they're drug addicts. Oh my God, Keith Richards doesn't know where he is half the time. Oh my God, why would you ever pay attention to anything in the Rolling Stone lyrics? Because this is what they do. I mean, this is what people do just to kind of cover it up. And you look at things like Indian Girl. Holy fuck, dude. 1980. Again, think about that. 1980. That's a really, really crazy song to be putting out in 1980 politically when you really think about it.
The invasion of Grenada was what?
Absolutely.
Like a year away, or is it going on? I forget. I forget. But yeah, they hit. There's a lot of the dumb shit, but like it hides a lot of like the more, intent. For every like stupid, like I hate brown sugar, and I recognize that's such a fucking racist song. But then like you have something like Dead Flowers, which is just like fucking a junkie song, and it's just like, whoa, this is glamorizing the drug life. This is kind of show like it's pretty fucked up.
Yeah. So I mean, you can look at what they did, because commercially, especially in America, let's call a spade here. Typically, your more intelligent, your more thought-provoking songs do not become the big hits. So you got to look into the deep cuts of things like that. So yeah, I think again, why would an album that's this bad be this good? Well, again, we talked about in the beginning. The Stones have this kind of magic, this kind of thing to it. But we're not talking about the Stones in whole. We're talking about Emotional Rescue, the album, Joe. Joe, would you recommend Emotional Rescue, the album?
No, this is not a good Stones album. It's the thing. Here's the egregious thing about this is it's not terrible either. It's so boring. Mm-hmm. It's a boring album. It's generic. It's phoned in, except for like a few spots, really uninspired. Like I said at the beginning, it feels like they're on fumes at this point. This is kind of like the last gasp of them, kind of, crank. Like the album after this will have a couple of hits, and then they kind of they'll put out albums, but they won't. It wasn't a big deal anymore. Like I don't want to say they're past their expiration date. That feels disingenuous, but younger people who were buying albums were not buying brand new Rolling Stones albums.
No,
they were buying Sticky Fingers. They were buying Beggar's Banquet. They're not buying Emotional Rescue.
No.
So no, I would not. It's not a good album. It's not a good album.
I'm with you on that. Again, I said it earlier in the podcast. If you are interested in being like in a Rolling Stones cover band, or you're so obsessed with the style of the Stones and you want to learn that DNA, this is the perfect album for it, because again, all the window dressing is gone. Every single beat, every single point for every style of Rolling Stones that they do, all their tips and tricks are right here. Like this is like a magician doing his tricks in a clear glass box for everyone to see how it's done. This is what that album is. The problem, so it's fascinating in that regards, but I can't recommend it because it's, as you said, it's not terrible to the point where it's entertaining. What I will love a terrible bad movie just as much as I love a great Academy Award-winning movie, because there's entertainment value. But once you start getting into that average band, that 4, 5, 6 star rating out of 10, that's where I struggle. And that's what this is. It's not, like I said, the Rolling Stones fail upward. Any other band, this would have been an absolute epic failure. They still got a couple hits out of it. But at the same time, no, I can't fucking recommend this album. It's goddamn trash. No, the hits came off, I think, because they were basically forced. I mean, you got it. I mean, it's kind of like the Rolling Stones. Has the Rolling Stones ever really given the the Rolling Stone magazine ever given the Stones a bad fucking review, even when they got really bad albums or put out really bad solo stuff? Fuck no, because they're legacy acts. At this point, they had earned the point in 1980 of being a legacy act. So yeah, that's my thought, Joe. So no, I'm not recommending it.
All right. I guess we're on the same page, Paul. That was Emotional Rescue by the Rolling Stones.
Yes. Yes.
All right.
So there we go. All right, Joe. Pluggy McPluggertons. What do you guys?
No plugs.
No plugs. No plugs. I don't either at this point. Like I said, I brought up the one that I'm working on. That's I'm currently still writing and doing things for. But as you could tell, we're in season 4 now. New year, new season. I think that's how I'm going to do it now. Every time we hit January, I will make it a new season. Joe, do you want to ask me what we're doing next week? Joe, do you want to ask?
Oh, what are we going to review next week?
So we're doing 2.
Oh,
We're doing 2 albums, 2 short albums. There's been some breaking news, Joe, in the wrestling world. Hulk Hogan can't feel his legs anymore. It's going to be wheelchair bound, and there's questions about how much longer Mr. Hulk Hogan has. Much like Randy Savage. Did you know that Hulk Hogan put out an album called Hulk Rules?
Yes.
With Hulk Hogan and the Wrestling Boot Band. Are you familiar with this?
Yep.
It's a short album, Joe. It's only a half hour long. That's album number 1 that we're doing. It's an EP. I figure we can't just do an album on that. So to contrast that, Joe, we are doing another EP, a 4-song EP from the shoegaze band called Outside Your Room, as the album by Slowdive.
Okay.
That is 4 songs, and it's coming in at 20 minutes.
Oh, good. They're long songs.
They're long songs, buddy. Yep. So we got Hulk Rules. Now, I don't know if Hulk Rules is on any streaming services. We might have to run into what's her nuts territory, Amanda Lear territory. I know it is out there on YouTube and Dailymotion and those places. So if you can't find it, let me know and I will send you it. I know that the Slowdive is out there.
Okay.
So how do you feel, Joe?
This
is what you were going to get. This is what you were going to get instead of Blondie, by the way. Was going to be this setup instead of Blondie. Luckily, we moved it a week, but I've been meaning to get to this one, and it's about time.
You'll pay, Paul. Don't think you won't pay.
I'm sure I will pay. You know what, though, man? This was rough, so I just figure let's just continue on the downtrend and try to hit fucking rock bottom fast. So,
Paul, I got my wheel of shit, and I can bring us to rock bottom if you want.
All right. Well, I know you got shit. I know you got shit. So, all right. Well, Joe, anything else we need to cover that we want to talk about the Stones or anything that we didn't hit? All right. So, Joe, you and I were talking a little bit after the podcast, and we're just going to do a quick add-on here. We decided that there's enough, and you agree with me, to talk about with Hulk Hogan, and we want to give Slowdive our true, their true due, as it were, on a not on a wasted EP. We're going to just go full bore in the Hulk territory next week, aren't we?
You got that, brother.
Brother, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Sushi.
All right. Now, Joe, do you want to take us out?
No.
Did we love you? Did we hate you? Do you even care? Yes, you did. We're the best damn review team out there. How did we rate your album?